Okay, well, welcome everybody to episode 33. Today's Friday, April the 16th, in case you're not keeping track. Episode 33 live from my drum room with my very good friend and guest today, Ash Soan. It's going to be fun. Ash and I just were chatting a few minutes ago. He's in the waiting room, in the green room, as we call it, enjoying the snacks that I have there for him. It's actually 6 o'clock in the UK, so he's maybe even having a glass of wine, possibly. Neil Porter. Neil, good to see you. Ladies and gentlemen, the legendary Neil Porter from Grand Theft Audio in the house. It's good to see so many folks watching. This is great. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in today, of course, and for tuning in last Sunday with Liberty DeVito and myself. That was a really fun chat. I've actually had time to go back and watch that one, and I don't always get to do that, and that was great. So actually, you know what? I'm going to put my earbud in here. Hopefully, this is still going to work. So thank you for tuning in. Quick update on YouTube: 714 subscribers as of today. Unbelievable. Got another phone call from the president of YouTube congratulating me for so many subscribers. Said that he's never seen anyone get this many YouTube subscribers. Apparently I have the most subscribers to my channel than anyone in the world, with 714. And it's just great to get that kind of personal attention from, the head of YouTube, the CEO or president, whatever he is. So that's great. Let's keep those numbers going, though. I want to get to 1,000. Let's see, what else can I tell you? Coming up next Sunday, the 25th of April, Todd Sucherman, drummer for Styx and drummer extraordinaire, will be joining me. That's going to be a great one. Todd's an old friend. I'm sure you drummers here on Facebook know who Todd is. He has an amazing presence. He's an amazing player and a heck of a nice guy too. So I'm looking forward to having Todd. And the following Wednesday after that, the 28th of April, I'm going to have none other than Stan and Jerry Kiawa of Pro Drum Shop Hollywood. That episode, fasten your seatbelts for that one, because I'm probably going to be able to sell that episode to like Comedy Central or HBO Comedy or something, because they're two of the funniest guys I've ever met. And it'll be very informative because they own Pro Drum Shop, which has been in business since 1959. So I'm excited about that. So Stan and Jerry Kiawa on the 28th, Todd Sucherman next Sunday, the 25th. And today, right now, without further ado, I'm going to bring on Ash Soan. So please give him a big round of applause. There he is. With
hey,
his, Ash, good to see you, man. I was just going to say, with your quarantine stash and all. I
know. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one.
No, you're not.
There's a sort of selection of hairy men around the world.
It looks great, though. I'm used to seeing you with the, you've always had the very stylish kind of light beard, the very George Clooney kind of look, but that's like another level of
it's mainly laziness, if I'm honest. It's sort of lockdown laziness. But the first lockdown I went for it, and then of course I've not seen any humans really, except for my wife and children, and it's like you forget that you look like some man in the wilderness, but it's sort of grown on me, literally.
I love it. Yeah, I just have to comment. Eric matched 716 subscribers now. Well, I just want to say I've picked up 2 more subscribers in the last little bit, so I'm very happy about that.
Congratulations. I'm looking down here, like you suggested. I'm looking at the comments too.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I have maybe the most tech savvy guest I've ever had on this show, or certainly one of them. So I'm excited that Ash is probably going to see some of the questions that I tend to not see. And then later on, after I sort of look through it, I go, oh, that was a great question. I wish I had seen it, So anyway, yeah.
All good.
We'll see how it goes. Yeah. Lee Mullen just made a comment, said, not as well groomed.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. We're disappearing into chaos.
I was thinking, I didn't say this earlier, but I not that I needed to when we were testing the signal, but I was thinking when we met for the first time, I had known your name for a long time, but I don't think we met in person until at one of the London artist sessions. I was, for those of you that are just tuning in and don't know this, I used to work for Zildjian. They make cymbals for drummers, go in the cymbal stands. And Ash is a Zildjian endorser. Sorry. It's my attempt at humor today with my dry throat. But I think we met at one of the artist sessions 10 or 12 years ago, maybe. Yeah. And Tina had spoken about you for many years, and maybe you just could never make it to one, or maybe
this is it. I was always working on, and I never really managed to get to the sessions. I always wanted to, and I just never managed to do it. And then I remember you saying, like, how come we've never met? And it's like, I had actually done home, because I've been with Zildjian now, I think it's 26 years now. So like
wow.
we had plenty of time to meet, but we never did. And actually that time that I came to the factory, that's the one and only time I managed to get there and see your very groovy office. And then then you weren't there for very long after that, which was really disappointing. We hooked up and then things changed.
I know. Me too, buddy. Yeah. And we've gotten together in London, a few times in the meantime, which has been great. And and at the NAMM show a couple of years ago, which was fun.
Yep.
That was, and I think you started to make that kind of a regular, well, I know this past year it didn't happen, but you've started to make that sort of a tradition too, to come over for NAMM.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed that time. And then, so 2020, I went, and there's still this whole speculation. None of us will really ever know. Yeah. But there's speculation that COVID was actually at NAMM that January. And it's interesting talking to people in hindsight, and then all the stories start coming. Oh yeah, because there's that thing they call it NAMMthrax. Don't they? That everybody gets ill at NAMM because there's so many handshakes, blah blah blah. Anyway, that lots of sort of bugs get passed around. But yeah, all the stories coming through afterwards, like what, I'm actually pretty sure I had it. That I was out of it for about 5 weeks when I got back. Which I've at first put down to being a little bit older and staying up all night with the likes of Joe Tester, etc., and Stanton Moore and all that sort of. And I just thought, it's taken me a little while to get back into the swing of being back at home. But it was definitely about 5 weeks. I couldn't sleep great. It felt like sort of permanent jet lag for about 5 weeks. And then it all started coming out. Oh, this thing was around. It's interesting when you start talking to people. There's a lot of people that think it was in Los Angeles in January.
Yeah, I think I wasn't. That was the first show that I didn't go to since like 1984.
Yeah.
Quick story is my wife and I had planned to go to Paris.
Yeah.
During that time, and about 2 weeks before, I don't know if you remember, there was some terrorist something in Europe, and we got a little freaked out about it as Americans traveling, and we were able to cancel our trip. And then I thought for a minute, well, gee, I could go to NAMM now, but then I thought, no, but then I couldn't, but then I don't need to, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And it was probably better, because I think you're right. I think I remember talking to Joe and some other people who, Ron Donnett, who I stay in touch with, felt very strongly that it was there a year ago, as you say. And then I got really sick, funnily enough, not being at the NAMM show, but the beginning of February, I had this terrible thing that hit me, like full blown at a gig on a Friday night at a private gig we were doing. I had to go and I had to go and throw up in between sets, and come back and play the second set.
Yeah.
But and then I was down for like about 5 or 6 days after that. But I'll bet you did, Ash. I'll bet you had it. It seems
Well,
like it, or some variant of it.
it's interesting, you know, and then you start talking to people, and you know, there's stories cropping up everywhere now, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
from everybody that was there, and you know, it's such a sociable event. You know, people are
Right.
so much hugging and hanging out. It's like it's absolute nightmare,
It's
really.
it's unavoidable. I know. And I'll tell you, I started to get an anthrax. I never used to get it. I used to get a little bit of it
Yeah,
way back when. But then I feel like the last 10 or 15 years, I was getting it, and I was trying harder to be more sanitary, washing my hands, trying not to shake as many hands and hug as many people. But yet I think it became like there's whatever virus or viruses were floating around at that show became so sort of prevalent.
yeah.
Um, it's interesting that you point that out, because it seemed like it was harder to shake it. Like I'd come back from it, and I'd have Kelly, she's like, don't get near me, and it would take like a week or something. But it seemed like as the years went by, it would maybe because I was getting older, it would just stay longer too, which
That's
is,
that's what I put it down. I just thought, you
yeah,
know, jet lag, it never gets any easier, does it? You know, and I thought
yeah,
this is quite a heavy, very heavy version of lag. Um, just really awful. I couldn't do anything. And then it became apparent that there's something going down, and it's what a bonkers. And here we
yeah,
are
yeah.
over a year later. You know, it's like what I mean, you couldn't really make it up. It's
I know.
what a
Yeah.
year, you know.
But you have managed, you're amongst a small number of people that I know anyway that have managed to really sort of, make lemonade out of lemons, as we say in the States, and you're working and you're staying busy. And I can see, I know you're getting a good amount of session work that you're able to do from your
Yeah,
home studio. And
yeah.
um, that's great. That's really
It's
great.
it's been so I did the voice for about 7 years,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
a couple of years ago I decided the studio was starting to get more and more kind of more and more sort of profile sessions and things. It was like a moment of change that I either jumped on or let go, and I thought, if I put my foot on the gas for the studio now, maybe it'll go and it'll be a really positive thing for me, you know. So I left the voice. So a lot of people have said, are you crazy? That's like, you know, it's a very well paid gig. It's for
Yeah.
musicians, it's a regular gig, which, you know, that's one of the toughest things for musicians, is it's so up and down. But it was a guaranteed regular gig. But I thought, I've got to give this little place a try, you know. So I left a couple of years ago, and then COVID happened. So I was well and truly set up for it,
Yeah.
for when people were ready to start working. When, you know, after the initial sort of shell shock of COVID hitting, eventually artists and producers and writers thought, well, we're not going anywhere. We've got to try and do our thing somehow.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been very, very fortunate to pick up
That's
some.
great. And I didn't, because we hadn't, we hadn't worked together in the context of us working together like we were. I didn't realize that I didn't really know what the situation was with the voice in terms of, I didn't realize you had just decided to just give it a go,
Yeah.
really to push the studio. What a great intuitive idea to do that, and ballsy too, to like take that.
It was
chance.
it took me a while. It was like a year decision, really, for me to sort of, shall I do this? Because financially it was very, very good, very, very good.
Yeah.
The guys are still doing it. The band that I was in, all the guys are there still, and you know, they're probably the only musicians that have had no real hiccup in the last year, because the shows just carried on. They've had the restrictions and masks and vaccinations, etc. They've had to go through all that. There's no audience now,
Right.
but they've had a gig. So yeah, it was a hard decision but I thought I've got to do it, you know, and I'm 52 this year. And I was thinking, you know, wouldn't it be great if I could set this place up and just approach 60 in a gentle way and just work here and spend more time with my family, which is a biggie, you know. So I just went for it. And I'm very, very thankful that it's worked out, and hopefully it'll just keep chipping along. And if I'm not working on a project or for someone, I'm trying to be creative in here, making music of my own and etc. You know,
absolutely. Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I follow all your different channels, and the music that you make just on your own is just so, you know, inspirational as a drummer, you know, and it segues to DeCarlo is making a note that I guess he met you. I think this is where I met DeCarlo, was at Frankfurt Music Mess 2011, so 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember you were playing Yamaha at the time, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
And you were doing demonstrations in the booth every day.
Yeah.
And that was the first opportunity I'd actually been able to see you, you know, play live. And I don't know if you remember this, but I think I came to every morning performance.
Yeah, I think it was you were there every day. Joe came pretty much every day, as did Paul Francis.
Yeah, yep.
So
and maybe Tina. Yeah,
posse of sort of you know, my fantastic sort of super fans. It was great to feel the support from you guys. I have to say, you know, because that was my first sort of outing, is to do any. I hadn't really done any clinics before that.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, this was new. I remember some of the things you said to me, actually.
I hope they weren't bad.
No. One of them was, you know, because I started to get, I think, you know, Yamaha realized, oh, this is, again, there's a guy that's come up that can do these things. People seem to be interested in what he's doing, etc. And I remember you saying, whatever you do, don't join the circus. And I was like, and honestly, it stuck with me, because I remember thinking that's actually really a very wise moment there that I should take note of. Wow. And I mean, I think what you were getting at was, it's very easy to, all of a sudden you're doing every single clinic possible and you're doing your thing, and then it's like, and before you know it, that's what you are. And it's like, I really enjoy those things, and I still do, and I enjoy the educational side of drumming a little bit. Not that I'm massively qualified to teach or anything like that, but I enjoy imparting a little bit of knowledge that I've got. But I definitely don't want to fully dive into that whole world. You know, I like putting my foot in and coming out. It's fab. You know, the variety of it, and actually, you know, hanging out with people that are like-minded. That's the bit I like. You know?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I vaguely remember that now that you say that, but when you said, I remember what you told me, I was like, oh boy, I hope I didn't say something really foolish. But yeah, I just felt like I was so, we all were, not just me, but we were all so, I mean, I'd heard great things about you, and I knew you'd had some big gigs with Delamitri and Squeeze, and you know, you were doing sessions at that time, and in fact, I remember at a Yard at the when we met at the Zildjian artist session.
Yeah,
you know, Yard was singing your praises, and you know, Yard's kind of like, he's got, you know, John, you know, Ash is a serious chap, you know, serious guy. Like, you know, you've got to get to know him. But after seeing you play, I was so floored, and I just felt like there, you know, there's definitely going to be a lot of opportunities, because people are seeing you now doing what you do, and I think it was just a way to just kind of say, do what you're doing, you know, like you, as a player, and it was from that. I remember you saying, don't, because I think what was slightly different, I didn't have like a show prepared. I didn't have any, and chop wise, I'm not really that guy.
and I was basically playing songs, I think, if you remember
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
I was just grooves and talking about grooves and playing songs. And I think really what you were saying was stick to that, don't get into the other realm really that you could easily get into, and probably have like a 2-year lifespan going around the planet doing clinics.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was definitely noted, and I'm really glad. And I still, I still love doing them. It's
yeah.
And that's very special that time for me. That actually, it was really great that year.
That was, and I was
Yeah.
just thinking too when you mentioned being out too late with Joe Testa, at the NAMM show. There was a night that a bunch of us went out that year at Frankfurt to a dinner at an Italian restaurant. Gosh, it was a cab ride away. I don't know if you were with us. Myself and Joe and Paul Francis and
Yeah.
You might not have been with us that night, but and Mike Dolbear was also with us.
Right.
And this was, I won't get into the details, but if Mike is watching this, Paul had a couple of glasses of wine and he challenged Mike to a push-up contest. So,
no, I can't
have you
remember
heard this story?
No, carry on. I do.
Yeah. Well, Mike is like built like a,
yeah,
he's a strong boy. So
like
he'd had enough, and we were sitting. It was a beautiful night. It was like a beautiful spring night in Frankfurt. So we were eating outdoors, and it was really nice and mild. And so there's like a patio about 10 or 15 feet away. So Mike had enough. And he said, "All right, come on, let's go." And they went over and did a push-up contest. And Paul kind of hung with him for about 4 or 5 push-ups, and then started to get tired. And Mike did about 20 more. Like he was just like, "Have you had enough?" It was hilarious. We were just, and and the point to all this is we drank many bottles of really good Italian Amarone wine, and so none of us were feeling any pain, and I paid for it the next day. So I wondered if it was one of those situations. In fact, I will just tell you this quick funny story. It was either the day before Steve Gadd's birthday, or it might have been Steve's. We called and wished him a happy birthday from the dinner table, and I on his voicemail, got his voicemail, and I left a message for him. So the middle of the night, he calls me back, and I'm asleep in my hotel room, and I answer the phone. I see it's him, and I answer the phone, and he's laughing, and he said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in Frankfurt," and he said, "Sounds like you guys are having a good time." And then he said, in fact, he said, "Are you still, are you still sloshed or something like that?" I said, "I think I might be." He starts laughing. He said, "Call me tomorrow." He said, "Get some sleep and call me tomorrow." It was that kind of night anyway.
I also remember it must have been sort of the birthday week, because I definitely remember we were at another dinner, and I think it was Rick Marotta's birthday or Jerry. I can't remember. But again, Testa called, and we're at the table, and the phone gets passed around, and people wishing. I think it might have been Rick's birthday. Yeah. Bonkers times. And I mean, that's sorry to go back to COVID again, but you think about, we took all of that stuff for granted, and now it's so when it comes back. I mean, it's. I hope those things happen again, and it'll be what an amazing moment again to be able to hang out at a dinner table shoulder to shoulder.
I know.
And do press-ups in the bar with Dolbear.
You would never get me. I could maybe hang with him for 5 push-ups, but then forget it. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, Mike's a good dude, man. He
certainly is. Yeah. He doesn't drink as well, which is probably why he can out-push up most of us.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. He's Mr. Clean, so he's always got a laser focus.
Yeah, fizzy water and press-ups only.
No, but I too, I'm looking forward to that, those days, hopefully sooner than later, when we can get back to doing things like that. Just we never even thought about, like you say, having a dinner with a bunch of friends and having some laughs.
Yeah, I mean, a restaurant would be good.
Right. Yeah. I know. I was going to say Kelly and I have not been to a restaurant since before lockdown. We've done takeout, but I mean, people, and no criticism to anyone who goes to restaurants, but we're just not comfortable in an enclosed area where
Well, quite right. I mean, that's exactly how it's passed on. In this country, the restaurants now have opened up again, actually, this week. But it's outside dining only. There's no outside. And some of the pubs outside again, food and drink outside only. But yeah, that whole, you think back to all the, well, gigs. I mean,
I know. Yeah.
The sweatiness, the people. I mean, it seems like a sort of fantasy now.
Yeah.
Those things that we used to just hang out shouting across trying to get served when the band's on, and I mean, all that stuff. I mean, I don't know. It's like science fiction.
It really is. I know, especially like the places that we would play at were these. They were absolutely the most conducive to spreading a virus. I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that, cheeky. I mean, I think about, I just hope that we're able to return to playing some of these places where that were small and everybody was packed together. But I don't know if they're going to have to change how things are going to be. I mean, maybe, presumably, I guess, but time will tell. Time will tell.
Yeah.
Well, I see there's a question from Brian Keeling.
Yeah.
He's asking if you engineer your own tracks there at the Windmill, or does he have his own engineer mixer when he does remote track videos? That's a great question.
Yes, I do engineer everything. And that's actually the bit that I'm sort of most passionate about in some respects. I'm hugely passionate about the drums and I played for years, but when I got the recording bug, the whole journey of that, and I'm still on it. And those tracks that you mentioned that I'm glad you like, John, because I'm experimenting. I'm experimenting with sounds and some of the feels that I'm hearing. But yes, I engineer everything myself. And in fact, Trevor Horn, I've worked with in the past at his studio, and there's always a plethora of guys around to help. And the first session I did here for Trevor, he said, "So, who sets the mics up?" And I'm like, "I do it, Trevor." And you could tell it took him a little while to process that the drummer is putting microphones on his own kit and then setting the gain on the preamp. And then I did another session for him, and he asked me the same thing because he's still trying to comprehend: is this actually happening? And I think there was a great podcast, which sadly isn't available anymore, but it was a podcast with Steve Jordan, actually. And one of the things he talked about was the guy asked him, "Why did you get into engineering?" Because Steve's a fantastic engineer, as well as a drummer. There's similar reasons, really, because he said he would set the drums up in the studio, and often he would go back, he would do a take and go back into the room like we do, sit down, and I didn't mean them to sound like that. And he would get more and more disappointed with the way that the sound was coming back at him from the sound that he's got in his head. So he basically got into engineering so he could deliver the sound that he's actually hearing. And that's one of the best things about it, is that I'm forever trying to hunt for the sound that's there. And it's exciting and never ending, really, that whole journey of like, okay, well, what about this sound? And then that ties in with work, when people will say they'll reference a track or they'll reference a kit sound, and then you've got to try and recreate that. I love it.
That's awesome. That's and what an incredible sound you have, and I'm sure people not that they're not hiring you for your your groove and your feel, but I'll bet in a lot of cases they're looking for a sound as well, right? They're looking, they'll like you said, they'll reference the track and go, I want that snare drum, or I want that,
Yeah.
that sound you had. Yeah.
People, like I guess the old blueprint was drummers were hired because their feel and their touch and their approach to songs, and you could, and the producer would talk to them about those aspects, the groove, right, and the feel and the structure. They would never go, do you think that snare drum needs a bit more compression length?
Mm-hmm.
And now these conversations are being had. People are chatting to me and going, we really like that fat snare, but we want it to be a bit more natural sounding, for instance, or we love what you're doing with that high snare. And so it's really interesting that those conversations are now being had, but I'm not the only one. It's happening all around the world,
But it's excuse me, but it's because they can speak that language with you that probably they can't speak with a lot of drummers. All right. I mean, it's because you're an engineer. They know that you can find that means, like you can find the means to the end result of what they're asking you for. Right. Versus if they said to me, I like that snare drum, but they probably would know they wouldn't know how to get me to change the sound to what they want, if that makes sense, right?
In the old days, it would be, oh, can you stick a towel on it? Can you stick some tape on it? And then these are the things that's what we were not restricted, but that's all we could do as drummers, was literally change the sound of the acoustic drums. But now, this is the bit that I've embraced fully, is trying to get sounds for people. And now often I get sessions and people will reference a social media post that I've done and go, can we get this kick sound? And I go, yeah. And I save all my tape. I use Pro Tools, which was a longer game to get. It's harder to learn than, say, Logic and some of the other DAWs. But I'm glad I did that. So the studio is 10 years old next year. So it's been about nearly 10 years that I've been on that whole journey. And I'm really glad that I stuck to Pro Tools, because that means, most of the producers that I'm talking to, they, as soon as you say I use Pro Tools, they're like, oh, great, he sort of speaks our language,
Yep.
And it's all that stuff. It just so happens I just love it. And I know some guys, they just want to play the drums, and I totally get that. But even when I was doing sessions before any of this, I was fascinated by the mics, and you, like we all do, you do a take and then you sit down, and the producer and the engineer are there, and you sit and you listen to your performance. I would also love to see what are they doing now. Why does my snare, I know what my snare drum sounds like in there, but what are they doing to make it sound like that now? And the same things would come up, the same compressors, same microphones would come up each time. And I think I just made mental notes, possibly, because I always had in my mind that maybe I would actually get some sort of way to record. And I remember saying to the guys at Trevor's studio, which is Psalm, which used to be the old Island Records, just off Portobello Road. Now sadly it is apartments. Bob Marley recorded there and lived there for a little while. But I remember saying to the engineers, what's the biggest bummer about a drum session? And they were like, well, it takes a long time to get a sound. And it can take maybe an hour to get a good kit sound. And the track, maybe an hour to record it or less. And then we break everything down. And they were like, what would be great if we could just leave the gear up and you can slowly tweak the stuff, tweak the mics. They stay there, and the compressor you can, and that's what I've done. So that's one of the things I sort of kind of noted. And this kit never moves. And the microphones, some of the mics haven't moved for nearly 10 years.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that I'm sure in the voice, that's what it was too, right? Your kit stayed there, and you never, it was just in place.
Yeah. I mean, each section of the voice, the gear would stay, but then it would eventually be, so after the blinds, it'd be broken down. But then when we go back into the battles, it would be there for like a month or whatever, just not touched. Yeah. And it's definitely the best way, because guys, it's that constant, sort of sound sculpturing in a way. You're going back and you're going, oh, maybe I'll take that a little bit. And you've got to be careful, because you can over engineer. I really had that sound and now I've lost it. That often happens. I just want a bit more top EQ out of this bass drum, and then you lose the thing that you had. It's like, it can be frustrating. But in fact, that's the thing that I've learned most over the years, is don't mess with it. In fact, I've got session templates that say, well, can't say it if there's children watching, but Ash, do not with this sound, because it works, and don't mess with it. Leave it. Yeah.
That's, I, to a much like a minuscule degree, I have the same. I've got a little setup here at home with these Shure mics and my little Zoom mixer, and I'm so glad you said that, because I've done that. I've had this great bass drum sound, especially that's the sound I'm always trying to really zero in on, and I've got the nice Vic Firth isolation headphones, and I'll have this great sound dialed in, and then I'll just go, but if I could just get a little bit more bottom end, or a little bit, and then whatever I've done, I can't get it back. You have to just start over again, right? I mean, that's, or get a basic sort of come back to it, but I can never get back to where I was. You know what I mean?
It's frustrating, and that's like I say, that's one of the biggest things that I've sort of the discipline of not, when you've got something good, don't mess.
Yeah.
And I guess that if you think about it again, if I call it the old blueprint of what we were asked to do as drummers before this whole change that's definitely happening. Not just drummers, all musicians. There's guitar players that are remote, and bass players that are remote, and keyboard players. They're very, very fortunate. They just need one channel, or two channels, stereo.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the drawback with drummers is that we need multiple mics, and it's an investment in time and money for people.
Yeah,
it's a big deal. I mean, it's but there's so many people that are jumping on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got a couple of questions here too.
Yeah.
I think it was Brian Keeling who asked favorite snare, top and bottom mic, also kicks. I think he's asking, you mic the snare from top and bottom, and
Yep. So on my main snare, it's a SM57, which is like the most standard snare mic in the world, and actually very reasonably priced. You can pick one up for about $100, I guess. And you could put an SM57 top and bottom. I've got on my main snare, I have 57 on top, and then I've got an SM58 underneath.
Oh, okay.
The fatter sound snare, I've got a 58 underneath, but I've got an old 1970s Sennheiser 421 on top, which is like an old one of those old. I remember seeing a picture of
black big.
Yes, although this one's a bit older, so it's got the cream. The cream shell, and I remember seeing a picture of Picaro's kit, head off the front. They had a NS10 speaker, which is what Russ Miller developed with Yamaha, which was then he developed this thing called the Subkick, but it was an old idea, which was take an NS10 speaker, reverse the polarity, which turns it into a sub microphone. And I saw a picture of Picaro's kit, and it had one of those hanging, and it had an old 70s 421 inside, and that was it. And I'm thinking, okay, I've got that. I'm going to give it a try. And it was an amazing sound. And I love those mics, the Sennheiser 421s. They're brilliant. And again, they're relatively reasonably priced sort of microphones. It's not going to break the bank. But I was talking about this the other day on another sort of podcast type thing. What would people ask, what would you recommend to start the whole process? And I always say just maybe one or two mics like you're doing, learn how that is, how that feels, how that works, what you can get out of those two microphones, and then just slowly expand your horizons, you know.
Yeah. That's great advice. Yeah. I'm going to read another question from Mark Ewell, asking what it was about Slave to the Rhythm that made him want to often showcase his playing on that track. Well, Mark, I think I could probably answer that one for you, but I'll let Ash do it. I mean, it's such a great song and such an incredible showcase. But yeah, that, and I will say you played it when I saw you in Frankfurt, and that was unbelievable.
Well, man, it's a very special song to me. So obviously, I didn't play on that. I was at school when Trevor released, Grace Jones released it, but when Trevor recorded it, 1986. Oh yeah, it was released, and the drummer is William Juju House. But the reason I remember I bought the record when it came out when I was 16. And I loved the feel. I didn't really understand what was going on. I was also massively into Trouble Funk at the same time, which is that same sort of go-go type feel.
Yeah.
I loved it, that feel, you know. And Rototoms. I don't know if you remember, but they, you know.
Yeah.
And so from very early on, that sort of feel, I was drawn to it, you know. And then years later, I find myself at Psalm Studios with Trevor Horn, Stephen Lipson, who's another fantastic producer that works with Trevor and has gone on now, works with Hans Zimmer and I've done movies with Steve, etc. Lol Cream from 10cc. And they wanted basically to do a club gig, a little gig. And the keyboard player, a friend of mine, Chris Braid, said, we need a drummer for this band. I said, who's in the band? He went, Trevor Horn, Lol Cream, Steve Lipson. I went, oh my God. And all they wanted to do really was Trevor aspired and Lol, they just wanted to play songs that they'd either written or they were associated with. And of course, so we did some 10cc stuff and Frankie Goes to Hollywood, etc. And Slave to the Rhythm came up, and Trevor, you know, it's a cheeky groove. There's no question about it. And I think he'd always wanted to play it live, and it was always the problem when it came to the groove. It was wherever they tried it, and it was like this sort of golden moment, really, because I loved that groove and I could play it. And I never forget, Steve Lipson went to the toilet, and I'm in Studio One, and Trevor's he looks over the top of his glasses and he said, should we try Slave to the Rhythm? I was like, yeah, sure. He said, okay. So I carried it off and started playing the groove, and his eyebrows just went boom through the roof. And he doesn't, I've never really heard Trevor swear before or since that. And Steve came back in the room and he said, he could play the groove. You know, he couldn't believe it, that I actually, this is going to be great. We're going to actually be able to play this song. And in hindsight, I didn't think of it at the time, but really that was my audition. To then work now for the last sort of almost 15, 20 years with Trevor.
With Trevor, yeah, I was going to say.
That was the moment really that made him, I didn't think of it, like I say, at the time, but I think that was the defining moment where I went, okay, this guy has shown something that is going to be useful for him later.
Yeah.
And then sessions started to come, and then the rest is, you know, we've had a great relationship and still do, you know.
That's fantastic. Yeah,
it's a very special song for me in a lot of ways, you know. I'd love to meet Juju actually, and talk to him about it, you know.
I met him years and years ago. Gosh, in the 90s probably.
Yeah.
Had to be, yeah.
Amazing. I mean, what a feel. And really, it ultimately that's his groove.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
he's a master at it, and it's mega.
yeah, but I mean, but I with tremendous respect to Juju, which he, as you say, deserves that and fully. You've made that yours as well. I mean, that you really, when you play that Ash, you own it. So, if I remember correctly, that was like the sort of finale of your clinic, right? Of your presentation was
Yeah.
you'd end it with that, and it was just like I was just struck by how much, and I know you'll take this the right way because you weren't copying Jeff Beccaro, but just how much you reminded me of Jeff and your approach and your feel and like you know, a lot of guys, there's a lot of guys that sort of play like Jeff or want to play like Jeff, but it was definitely you, but there were elements that had that same like I felt moved the way that I feel
Oh,
when I yeah, I was like
well,
so
thank you, John.
moved
I
by
mean,
it.
that's all we want as musicians is for people to actually be touched by what we're doing. So it
Yeah.
means a lot, man. And I remember at the time it really meant a lot because I remember and that's what's beautiful about music, isn't it? You uh,
Yeah.
it's when that happens, it's magic when you're doing a thing. I'm I'm trying to play the groove to make people feel good, and and when you see it happen, it's like absolutely mission accomplished. It's like you want it to feel good, you want people to be touched by that thing, and it happens. And getting back to Steve and Jeff and all of those absolute greats, you know they have it every time they play. I'm pretty sure every time Gadd touches the drums, somebody's being moved, an engineer, a producer, an artist, and then when
Sure.
people
Yeah.
listen back to it, you know,
But
and
you
so
as well. Yeah. I mean, I think the same goes with for you as well. When whenever if I see something you've put on the internet or when you sent me those tracks to listen to, it's that same kind of thing. It's so special. And I tend to go off on this a lot when I do these with drummers, and I would never ever want anyone to think that I don't appreciate all these great drummers that have tremendous, technical ability, which you also have, by the way. You do have great. You sell yourself extremely short on your technical ability because I've heard it and I've seen you play it. But last week I was talking with Liberty DeVito and we were talking about playing fast and uh, and I hope anyone who saw that didn't take that as me criticizing guys that play fast because that's certainly something too. That's
yeah,
very it's not only cool, but I mean, there are times when you want to be able to play some fast things. But
yeah,
um, and I guess I'm veering off. But what I'm getting at is that there's a really special something to how you can connect with people with the way you make it feel, and it's obvious because you're hired to record for people because of that. So it's
mate, bless you. Like I say, I'm
yeah
still striving as well to try and become better at that. And I feel I've been very lucky in musical situations to sort of see great people playing and learning from them, and most importantly, I think being aware that Summit specials happening, even
yeah
though, like when I was younger, I remember, we all are impressed by technique,
absolutely yeah
and interesting technical things. But I also remember thinking, oh, why is it that, say, Steve Ferroni can play eighth notes and two and four, or Andy Newmark is another one, which I'm very, very, very lucky to know Andy and see him play when I was younger.
yeah
And he's playing two and four and like one and three on the bass drum, but it's like witchcraft. It's like magic. Like
I know what you mean yeah
how does that feel? So absolutely amazing.
yeah
And if
yeah
you write the thing down on a piece of paper, pretty much anyone can play those notes.
right
And that's the bit that I wanted to really, really try and I'm still on it. I'm still trying to find out why do some people feel so amazing when they play something so simple.
yeah
I think I remember you years back in the day. I remember you saying to me, it's in some respects, it's actually harder to play less and make it mean something, you know, than doing some amazing stuff. You know, I mean, the technical ability of some of the drummers that are around on this earth at the moment is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, it's astounding.
You've never seen, you know, I'm old enough to remember when some of this, when, you know, when Dennis Chambers hit and Record hit, and we were like, wow, these guys are, but it's gone somewhere else. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I was gonna say that too, that I remember, you know, when we all started getting double bass drum pedals, and sort of, you know, if you didn't want to play two bass drums, you got a double pedal, and people that started to sort of master the idea of playing double bass drums. And then it became a thing where every young hotshot that came along had that down, like out of the gate. Like, you know what I mean? It was no longer even that. It's still a special thing, but now I think it's, I'll see these young players. I sound like an old guy, but I'll see, you know, guys that have only been playing a few years, guys and gals that really have that down. Like,
it's
almost,
It's amazing. It's, I guess it's quite interesting how people's focus is sort of changed. That people can get stuff down. You know, because I think about, so Delamitri that you mentioned earlier, one of the main reasons that I got that gig is in the early 90s is that I was comfortable with a click, and there were still guys in the UK anyway that didn't feel so comfortable playing with a click live, you know. But now everyone can play to a click. It's like, okay, and in fact now there's a new phenomena that I've seen a couple of times. Now people can't play without one.
How about that?
It's a crutch for people. And they need that, and they haven't got like the old school thing, which, you know, all the older guys have, which is like, oh no, you're the time, really. And you must have a sense of that. But now people don't need a sense of it because it's there.
Because it's interesting.
It's there every time. It's there on every session. It's there on every live gig. You know, and I've sorry, John. I just feel very blessed. I've worked with older generation musicians like Hamish Stewart and stuff, where it's traditional. You count the band off, and then it's got to feel good, and you got to hang in there with the vibe. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's okay. This is about you. It's not about me. But I was just going to say that I found myself at times using it as a bit of a crutch on gigs, where I had this metronome app on my phone. And I would use it just to help me, you know, at least start the tune at the right tempo. And oftentimes I'd either shut it off, or I just wouldn't look at it anymore. It's like a, you know, red light flashing kind of thing. And one of my bandmates one night said that to me. I forget what the circumstance was. Paul Candelore said something like, he said, "You don't need it, man. Don't worry about it." He said, "You know, you don't want to start relying on that." I said, "You know, the problem that I have sometimes is," and I would love to know what you think about this, Ash, on a live gig where you've just played a really up-tempo song. And I think it's a normal thing for us drummers, is you've just finished a song that's, you know, maybe 132 beats per minute. And then you're going to do a mid-tempo tune. And your tendency is just to just want to count it fast, you know, because you're revved up. So I'd kind of use that to keep me honest. But I found that I was starting to get a little bit freaked out if I didn't have it, if I couldn't set it for like, okay, and I go, well, I know what the tempo of this song is, you know. And I had to just, as you say, you know, it's easy to use that as a crutch, but I'd start going, wait a minute, I've played this song 1,000 times and I know really what the tempo is.
You know the tempo. And it's, you know, I think, I can't remember which drummer said to me years ago, but they said, if, you know, in an instance like that, sing the song. And lyrically, does it scan comfortably in your head? Yes. Okay. Count it in. You know, it's as simple as that, really. But it's interesting, you know, that tempo sort of like, what could you call it? I remember Keltner. I don't know how true this is, but he talks about he won't have a chocolate bar because it upsets his internal clock. And I mean, I've never been that sensitive. I don't think anyway. But I have experienced that thing that you're talking about on a gig where I've got a click, but no one else in the band has, which often happens, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, the band are just playing to you. You count them off, and they're playing to you like normal. But you have a metronome because there might be stuff on track. There might be some strings, or well, it depends with pop music nowadays. Everything on track and video getting triggered, and you're just sort of almost miming. But I remember, I can't remember which band it was, but the singer said, "It's too slow, that tune." I'm like, "No, that's the correct tempo."
Yeah.
And there were a couple of nights going, and I remember the singer saying, "It's slow, it's slow." It's like, no, it's exactly the tempo. It's just that singer was excited in that tune before. Literally the metabolism is up, the heartbeat's going, adrenaline's pumping, and this tempo now feels back, but it isn't. It's absolutely spot on, and it's like it's not lying.
Yeah.
The metronome doesn't lie.
I never thought of that. Yeah. I've experienced exactly what you're talking about in my band. I'm the only one that uses it. So because we're not playing with any sequencers or anything. And it's a funny running joke in my band where one of the guitar players, Paul Gianelli, likes everything a little bit faster than if the tempo of the tune is like 118, he likes it around 120. He likes it just a little ahead, a little on top. And Neil, our singer, Neil Porter, likes everything maybe a little behind. So we'll start a tune and I'll start it at the right tempo. And Neil will, and I'll look over to Paul, and Paul will go to me, pick it up. And Neil will turn around and look at me. He'll look at me like with this, like almost like he's sensing that I'm not even speeding it up. He'll be going like, take it. It's like
you're just being needled by another musician. I know it's fascinating. And actually you described the hell that drummers can go through.
Yes.
It's what's that great gag? The drummer he's auditioning for a band and he's like, so do you want me to speed up or slow down on this one?
yeah, exactly.
Amazing. It's what a thing. But it is fascinating, getting back to what we were saying about people's sort of metronomic sense of time is definitely it's better. I think most pop music, nearly everything that I do is clicked. Pretty much everything, especially on TV show, everything is clicked within an inch of its life because it's got to fit before the ad.
Sure.
Although what's interesting, I did that Seth Meyers TV show, and the intro and the outro themes were clicked, but everything else wasn't, which I was astounded. But I think what the reason that they don't do that is they want to keep the excitement of a live band.
I see. Yeah.
And you've got a better chance if there's no click. It's going to keep people on their toes, But it's interesting. I think pop music, pretty much modern pop music, everything is clicked, and I think even punters, even people that are listening to the music that aren't musicians, I think even their sense of time is better over the years. I think people know when stuff's speeding up and they don't know what that is. They know if things are moving. I'm pretty sure of it,
I think you're right. Because now I see, it's interesting. I see little comments from people on it's going to sound silly, but like if you go into a forum where they're talking about a live such and such record and people that are obviously punters, they're not musicians. They're saying, yeah, but that version of whatever was was too fast or something, which I feel like you never really heard that before. You never heard people commenting like that. Yeah. They'd go, yeah, it's a great version of that song live, but it was a little, now people are a little more critical. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, it's amazing. They're sensitive to time moving. It's amazing. but I guess that, Darwin would say that's what happens, evolution.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And I just have to say, Neil Porter happens, and I don't know if Paul Janelli's watching. Neil Porter happens to be watching, the singer in my band.
Yeah.
Grand Theft Audio for all of you at home, and he laughed at that comment. But he really does have, he really does have good time. I mean, there are a lot of songs that he starts on his own, and I'll just give him a little count, and he's very reliable when it comes to that stuff. So Neil, I just it's a running joke that we have in the band where Paul G always wants everything a little bit faster,
Yeah.
and Neil wants it.
I mean,
right.
this is the dilemma of all drummers on earth. I guess very rarely are you going to get a band where everyone's, pockets so perfect that you don't have to worry about it. I remember, you turned me on a few years back to those two lads that they called the Drum Brothers.
Yes, yeah, sure. Alessandro and yeah.
So early on, Steve did that whole thing with the pizza.
Yeah,
remember that?
I do. But that was my idea.
Was it?
It was.
It was fantastic. But I also remember one of the best ever things. They asked him. They said, "What's groove?" And I'm like, this is going to be excellent. I'm going to sit here. And I cannot wait. And Steve was he's fantastic. Took his time. I think groove is, and it's like, please come on, just tell us. We all want to know from you. And he just said, it's an agreement. And I thought, wow. He said, it's when everybody is in agreement in the band that, this is where the downbeat is. This is where it feels, we're all agree that it feels the one is here. This is what it should feel like. He said, when everyone is in agreement, then it starts grooving. And I thought, what a fantastic way of describing it. It was so beautiful. I should find that clip actually and put it on my Instagram because it was so brilliant, I thought.
I remember that too, Ash. And I think if they'd asked me that, I probably wouldn't have said that. I don't know what I would have said. I would have been thinking about me, which is wrong. And that's the beauty of Steve Gadd is he immediately brought it into, he's so exactly perfectly right that it's, and I know you agree too. It's like, it's an agreement. A groove isn't a groove unless everybody's grooving. I mean, you and I could groove all day, but if the bass player isn't feeling it with me and you, and it's.
And it was so eloquently, perfectly put. It's like one of his fantastic fills that contains hardly any notes, but everybody's leaping in the air. Just like that. But so fantastic.
Well,
I'm going to find it, and I'm going to chop that little section and stick it out because I think the kids should see it.
They absolutely should see it. And I probably still have a way to contact Alessandro. So if you have any trouble, let me know, and I'll send him a little note. And
I'm sure it's there in the YouTube mat,
Ethernet. Yeah. So talking about Steve and we mentioned Jeff earlier. I mean, I'm guessing they were. I know you had a lot of influences, but they had to have played a pretty big part in your sort of early vocabulary anyway, as far as like
enormous, absolutely enormous. Beccaro, the halftime shuffle thing, we've talked about before, but I remember hearing it. In fact, I saw an old drum teacher of mine, Dave Hassel. He taught me in Manchester, but before Dave, I had a teacher in Shropshire where I grew up in England, and I remember hearing Rosanna. And I think it was 1984 I heard it. So I would have been 14. And I remember I've been playing drums about 4 or 5 years by that point.
Okay.
I remember thinking what is that? What is that thing? I'd never heard anything like it. And I remember my drum teacher at the time, even he couldn't explain it to me. And of course, this was well before the internet. You can't just go halftime shuffle, bam, and then there's 300 guys on YouTube, me included, that are explaining it. And especially in England, it was like, okay, you've got to try and figure out what's going on yourself
Yeah.
by rewinding and listening. And at first I thought he was playing all the notes with one hand. I was like, that can't be possible. The snare drum grace note and the hi-hat frequency wires are similar on my old stereo. It sounded like it's going. And eventually, I think it was about a year later, someone showed me a Modern Drummer magazine and someone had transcribed it. And I was like, wow, that's what he's doing. Okay.
So you could read, and not to jump away from what we're talking about, but I was going to ask you, so you had studied, you saw a transcript and you were able to look at it and see what it was.
I could see that, and I could certainly figure out, okay, I get it.
Yep.
The 1 and the 3 and the little grace note in the middle. And yeah, my reading was, not great, but I could understand what I was looking at.
Yeah. Yep.
And then trying to learn it. And then, like I said, I'm 52 this year and I'm still trying to get it good.
Oh man, come on. So I have to tell you, so when jumping back, when that record came out, Toto 4 came out actually in 82, but you were a young lad. 2 years before that, Led Zeppelin, In Through the Outdoor with Fool in the Rain comes out. John Bonham's playing, Fool in the Rain.
Yeah.
That first time I heard that, and probably the 101st time I heard it, that same week after I bought the album, I had not a clue on how to play it. I just couldn't. The idea of doing what he was doing, it just was so foreign to me. And I could play a little bit of a shuffle. I was 19 years old, almost 20 years old at that point. I'd been playing since I was 11 or 12. So I was in a band and we were playing all the time. And I remember I would sit there and try to play that, but it just seemed so foreign. And then when I heard Rosanna 2 years later, I realized, I read somewhere Jeff had said he got the idea from John Bonham and from Bernard Purdy to come up with Rosanna. And somehow hearing Jeff play Rosanna made a little more sense, maybe because I was a little older. Yeah. But to your point though, and what I'm getting at is that it was the ghost notes on the snare drum that I wasn't hearing initially. And so I was playing the halftime shuffle, but still feeling like it wasn't connecting. And then when a friend who really broke it down said, no, you've got to play these ghost notes with the snare drum. And I actually had it for a little while, and then I never really got it perfect. My son actually can play the shit out of it. He really can. He can sit down and when I had Greg Bissonette, a quick funny story, when back in the 90s, 1994, Greg did a clinic in Boston, and my son was 7 years old, and I brought him to the clinic, and he got up and played the Rosanna Shuffle on Greg's. Yeah, it was a proud moment as a dad, So Greg, when we did one of these a few months ago, he said I had my son come on now at age 33 and play it. It was a fun moment, but anyway.
I popped in on that one. I saw a little bit. I didn't see that moment, but I try and pop in on these because I love these. Your drum room hangs. It's so fantastic. Greg, what a master of many styles and feels, and I aspire to someone like that too, to be able to sort of confidently feel comfortable playing different genres. That's a thing too. That's another whole world, isn't it? Yeah. But so Jeff for sure.
Yeah.
Gadd definitely. But I also very early on I got Stuart Copeland. The energy of Stuart hit me, like it does everybody,
Absolutely.
And I think it actually physically did hit Sting a couple of times.
I think so.
But I love Stuart's playing, and just the energy of that fella. And I've been very fortunate enough to meet him with Trevor. In fact, about 4 or 5 years ago, we did a gig with Lol again, Lol Cream, Trevor, and Steve Lipson, and we were playing a summer festival. And I noticed on the list it was Message in a Bottle, and I said, "Oh, cool, we're doing that on the set list," Yeah. And Trevor said, "Well, you're not." I said, "Oh, who's doing it?" He said, "Stuart." I went, "Stuart who?" He went, "Stuart Copeland." I was like, "Oh my God." And Seal was doing some gigs with us. We did like a sort of handful of festivals, and Seal was a guest, and so was Stuart, and he came on and did Message in a Bottle.
Oh my gosh.
For like, I think we did like 2 or 3 shows. But I'll never forget when he came into the room when we were rehearsing. It was like a comet, you know, like a ball of energy. And everybody in the room, there's probably must be about 15 people in the room. Instantly, all the focus was on this tirade of energy that came in. And then he gets on the drums, and it's the same. It's like, of course, it's exactly, he plays exactly like his personality. And, and I've said it funny enough about Steve, when I've been fortunate to meet him a couple of times, and he's always been very giving and gentle person and very open to what's going on. And then funny enough, when he plays the drums, hey presto, it's the same thing. He's very giving musically. He's very open with the way that he approaches music. And so, Stuart, I love him dearly as a bloke. I mean, it's just brilliant fella. I'd imagine him and Keith Moon, if they got together, there would be some sort of nuclear reactor.
I think so. Yeah.
Going off, because from what I understand about Keith, he was the same, like effervescent personality.
It would be like 2 meteors crashing into each other, just like the amount of atomic energy.
Yeah.
I know. I
did meet him. I mean, there's a possibility he could have done.
Yeah. I've met Stuart a couple of times. I don't know him, but he's, I remember being the first time, and probably the second or third time we sat next to each other at one of these Guitar Center, judging the Guitar Center finals about 20 something years ago. And I just remember I said a couple of things to him, and I thought, okay, I'm going to just shut up because I'm going to sound like I'm just looking for an excuse to chat with him, He was very focused, and I'm going, so know any good sushi places around? I don't know, just trying to make conversation with him. But yeah, I'm such a huge fan of his.
Oh yeah. Such a dude. What was also remarkable about him too, actually, is that he had to play my drums. So Stuart's, I think, 6'4". And I'm not. So he sat on my drums, and also my kit's detuned and like this.
Right. Whole different. Yeah.
But he just sat on my drums, and he sounded like Stuart Copeland immediately.
Yeah.
And you just go, wow. I think that's one of the things that I miss about this whole world of technique playing, is that people's voices have gone. There aren't, and maybe I'm not skilled enough to hear the difference between the sort of plethora of notes, really. But that's what I miss, is the characters. Like Stuart. I mean, 3 or 4 notes on a hi-hat, Copeland.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But one of the things I think, with the speed stuff that's going on, I think kits have to be tuned a certain way for you to accomplish that level of technique. So if the kit is tuned a certain way, everyone's tuning the kits, I guess, the similar way to get the sort of
like rebound or
the rebound and the sort of level of sport that you need to get that out of your drums. But then all of a sudden, everyone sounds they sound the same or very similar.
I agree.
It's much trickier to hear individual voices, I think, through all that. And that's the thing that I hope comes back round again, that you get a guy that has done something wacky to his drums, or is himself a wacky personality, that their voice comes through the kit. I try, and if I meet younger drummers, I definitely tell them about Stuart and people like that you should also aspire to be a voice,
And he's a great example of a guy that, as you said, he came in with an entirely different voice from anybody, let alone his style, which was entirely different from anybody. And I remember the first time hearing Roxanne in 1977 or 78. And it was just like it flipped everybody on their ear. Like, what is he playing? What is he doing?
Yeah.
and it just, he just kept going from there. And like you say, I can totally relate to what you're saying, as far as I could hear him play the hi-hat and the cross stick, like
Yeah.
two beats and know instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
It's,
thing.
it's
And, you know, again, you know, I'm still trying to get that thing. And I think, you know, most musicians are aspiring to try and find that sound that you've got, or feel that you've got. And it's, you've got, as in you've got it in you, you're trying to dig it up and find it, and
yeah.
hope that it sticks.
Well, I think you've got it, Ash. I do. I think you've got it.
You know, I definitely feel that I've achieved, and I feel very, very happy with the way my career sort of, you know, laid out. And I'm, you know, and work still seems to be coming. I'm very, 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 very happy with my lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you deserve all the success that's coming your way too. I mean, you've certainly paid your dues. I had a couple things I was going to quickly talk about too, and because I know we're running on some time, but I want to say hello to Dave Phillips, who's watching. He says hello to you and me.
Mr. Phillips, he's on holiday down on the south coast of England.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. Well, hello, Dave. Yeah. Have you got he's asking, do I have a Gretsch broadcaster? No, I don't.
Not yet.
Not yet. I don't. I have just these old, you know, dilapidated drums from the 60s and 70s that, you know, seem to be okay, but
I mean, they barely work.
They barely work. No, but I've thought about getting a broadcaster set. And Jerome Marcus says, big up, Ash.
Oh, Jerome,
good to see so many guys in the UK watching. And Sam Broad just made a comment that he loves my jacket and shirt, so I'm showing love for my friends.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
That's pretty much two of the biggest to come out of
there.
here.
Yeah. It's kind of, if I had a Who hat or a Led Zeppelin headband or something.
I've actually got a badge that when I see you, I will pass over.
Oh yes, thank you.
Okay.
Well, but I can't accept that. That's. I'll just touch it for luck.
but again,
I was gonna.
What a voice that fella has.
Oh, I know. You know? I know. Yeah, exactly. But I was just gonna, you know, you made me think of something that it might be kind of a funny thing for people to hear about when you're talking about Jeff, and you know, his voice and his and sort of the way he approached things. You're talking about miking the bass drum. When I worked for DW, I got to know Jeff a little bit, and I remember at one point we had come out with an improvement for the linkage system on the double bass drum pedal. Don Lombardi, you know, who is still owns the company, of course, but at that time he was like designing all these, you know, new and improved things, and that was a big improvement on the linkage system. And Jeff didn't have a double pedal at that time. Right. Or ever, I think. Yeah. So I was on the phone with him about something, and I said, "Oh, by the way, you know, we've," and I just kind of thought maybe he just didn't want to deal with the fact that the linkage was not that happening before. So, you know, we've got this new linkage system, and, you know, I could send you a double pedal, or I could bring it down to where you guys rehearse, or, you know, to your house some night. And he just started laughing. He said, "Oh no, man, you know, that voice." He's like, "Oh no, man." He said, "You kidding me? I forget exactly what he said. I can barely play eighth notes with my left foot on the hi-hat." Like he was totally being modest, and he's like, I can barely like get my left foot to play like eighth notes. Forget the double pedal, man. That's not my scene, you know. Yeah. And I so respected that. Like,
yeah,
he was just like, "That's cool, man. That's for other guys, but not for me," you know. And
it's I've heard similar stories about Jeff about that.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the reasons why he was so great, really, is because he was always striving to be better. And it's not like I don't think it's not like a sort of British thing where he's putting himself down continually, you know. Yeah. Which, you know, that people definitely do that in the UK. They're sort of like, "Oh, I'm rubbish." But I think he genuinely knew his weaknesses, and therefore his strengths were much stronger.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I think for me, a definite moment in my life was when I realized that I wasn't so good at some things, but when I realized, oh, but I am actually all right at this. When I realized that, then things started to happen for me.
Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
When I realized that I felt comfortable playing simpler, and I felt comfortable playing songs, that's when, you know, when I sort of almost accepted what kind of a musician I was, it got better. So I hear it
Yeah.
from what he's saying, you know.
And probably, I'm guessing,
I've never played double bass drum pedal. I've got one now, but I play an auxiliary kick. But I've never ever done that thing. I've never been able to. Never really wanted to do it. But it's interesting. Yeah,
it's a commitment. I mean, I did it in the early '80s.
Yeah.
When I went through this sort of Terry Bozzio, Simon, had all these guys influencing me that played all that stuff, and I got it a little bit, but then I kind of realized, it wasn't really ultimately my scene, so I kind of went back to. But I was just going to say, in your case, I'm guessing too that when you said you realized, whether it was your limitations or just playing simpler, I'm also guessing that you had an affirmation from the people that you were playing with too. Like, you probably saw that, you got affirmation from people saying, man, I love playing with you. You sound, you make the band sound great. You make the song sound great. And I think that's a huge part of it too, where you start to look at, like you say, all the positives and less of the negatives, and you go,
absolutely that.
Yeah.
And a big one for me was singers. That's what it was, really. That singers enjoyed having me. I mean, I'm talking like way back when this is like way before any singers that are famous. I'm talking about playing in clubs that I would get rebooked with singers that were in cover bands, and they would ask for me, and I'm thinking, that's interesting. They want me to do it. I wonder why that is. And then I started to realize, they enjoy my drumming because I'm well, like Ringo so fantastically put that story when someone said, oh, you're one of the greatest. Why is it that you're one of the greatest song drummers in the world? And he said, well, I'd only do a drum fill when they stop singing.
I'd never heard that, but that's perfect.
And it's an absolute nugget of gold, really.
Yes,
if you think about it from a singer's perspective, like,
right.
Don't fill when I'm singing.
Yeah.
And I think that was, that was where I was coming from. And when I realized, oh no, some of these people are booking me because I'm supporting them a bit, maybe, and I'm not trying out my new lick.
Yeah.
In that verse when they're trying to connect or whatever.
I know.
And then I thought, okay, this is a thing I'm going to pursue, song playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And doesn't it seem so simple, Ash, that like what Ringo said and what you're saying, like not playing a fill when the singer's singing. Yeah, I know.
I mean, such a beautiful, brilliantly put. I'd only do a drum thing when they stop. so magic.
Oh man. Oh, that's great. Well, I mean, this has been so fantastic, and I knew the time was going to fly by. Oh no, thank you. Thank you. I know it's running on an hour and a half now, so sorry it's a little longer than we thought, but
oh no, it's been a joy.
Great. Well, so anybody watching, if you don't already know, you can find Ash he has a Facebook page, Ash Soan, just as Ash Soan drummer, Ash Soan.
Yeah, it's like a musician page. Yeah.
Yeah, musician page. Like it, follow it on Instagram, YouTube page. I just subscribed to today. I don't know why I hadn't before, but yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'm on that. Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
All the same nonsense on all the platforms.
No, it's great. And we talked about this earlier, and I'll just say it again. The best thing about it is that the quality of the videos that you put up on these pages is like, that's where I'm coming from now. Like I'm listening to just all the nuance, and you can hear all the sounds so well. It's fantastic.
Well, yeah, thank you.
Quality.
And that's one of the things, again, getting back to what we were talking about before, really, which was, wouldn't it be great when you're on a session, if you're playing a halftime shuffle and you can actually hear all those grace notes like you want to hear them. So that's that again, to reiterate, that's another reason why I really love this working space, is because I can go, okay, the groove has got this going on. I want to make sure that people feel it and hear it. It's a very powerful position to be in when you start getting your head around engineering.
I know. I mean, I know from knowing Dave Weckl and Simon Phillips that
Dave has always done it, hasn't he?
Yeah, and Simon too. It's a huge, like you say, a huge commitment, separate from playing the drums. I mean, like you said, it's the not just even financial, but just like learning about the gear and understanding microphones and compressors and all the mixers and whole other world.
And I get it. Some guys are like, nah, I just want to play the drums, and that hopefully soon we'll get back to that, where people will just be hired and they'll go into studios and it'll be back to normal. I
hope so. Well,
yes.
Thank you so much. Don't go away, because we'll say goodbye in the chat room. But thanks for watching, everybody. This has been so much fun. Yard, you did come in late, but you can rewind it and watch it. It was great, and we mentioned your name a few times, Yard. Ash actually had nice things to say about you. Me, not so much, but. And Ash, we have to do this again, because
I'd love to.
Yeah, I would love to too, because I feel like there's so many things that we could have got into, like like drum configurations and actual other microphones and things like that. So we'll do this down the road again.
Let's do a part 2 whenever you like. JD.
Like it. Yeah, great. All right. Thanks, everybody. Tune in next Sunday, the 25th, for Todd Sukerman, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And the 28th will be Stan and Jerry from Pro Drum Shop Hollywood. So thanks for watching, everybody. You guys are awesome. Big hand for my buddy Ash Soan.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys soon. Stay safe, everybody.